Take a moment, just one single uninterrupted moment. Breathe in deeply, letting the air fill your lungs completely, and as you exhale, release the tension you've been holding in your shoulders, your jaw, your mind. When was the last time someone asked you a question not about what you do, but about who you are? Not about your children's latest milestones, not about your upcoming work deadline, not about what's for dinner tonight. No, a real question, one that probes beneath the surface of your meticulously managed life. Who are you really, when you strip away the titles of mother, wife, professional, daughter, friend, and caregiver? Who exists in that quiet space before the world rushes in with its demands and expectations? This is the silent question that echoes in the hearts of so many women, a quiet, persistent hum beneath the noise of a life lived for others. The daily marathon begins before the sun even has a chance to properly greet the sky. The alarm blares at 5:30 in the morning, a jarring summons back to a world that needs you. Coffee first, always coffee, the fuel required to launch the well-oiled machine of your household. While it brews, you're already mentally cycling through the day's logistics. Lunches for the kids, that permission slip that needs signing, the presentation for the 10 o'clock meeting. You move through the morning on autopilot, a whirlwind of activity, checking work emails while flipping pancakes, orchestrating the complex dance of breakfast routines, school drop-offs, and a hurried commute. The day unfolds in a series of roles you play with practiced expertise: the competent professional, the efficient household manager, the patient homework supervisor, the nurturing storyteller at bedtime. And then, finally, after the last dish is put away and the house falls silent, you collapse into bed, just to gather enough strength to do it all over again tomorrow. But in that sliver of time, that fragile pause between brushing your teeth and letting your heavy eyelids fall shut, a whisper often emerges from the deepest part of you. It's a gentle, almost timid voice, easily ignored amidst the exhaustion. Who am I, it asks, when I'm not being everything to everyone else? For a long time you may have pushed it down, dismissed it as a fleeting thought born of fatigue. You've told yourself you don't have time for such navel-gazing, that your identity is intrinsically tied to these roles you cherish and the people you love. You have responsibilities after all. People depend on you. But if you're hearing these words today, it's likely because that whisper is no longer so easy to ignore. It has started to grow louder, more insistent, transforming from a gentle query into a resonant call that you can no longer pretend not to hear. You are not alone in this experience. This is not a sign that you are ungrateful or failing, or that you've made the wrong choices in life. On the contrary, it is a sign that a deeper, more authentic part of you is stirring, demanding to be seen. This feeling is the quiet, unspoken identity crisis of the modern woman. We have been conditioned for generations to measure our worth through our service, our productivity, and our relationships. We have been taught that our value lies in how well we perform our designated roles. But what happens when those roles, as meaningful as they are, start to feel less like a true expression of self and more like costumes that have become too tight, too heavy, and no longer fit the person who has been quietly evolving underneath? The truth is, you are not simply the sum of your responsibilities. You are a whole, complete, and multifaceted human being with dreams, desires, talents, and a unique essence that existed long before you became anyone's anything. Let me paint a picture for you, one that might feel uncannily familiar, as if pulled directly from the pages of your own life. You are constantly bone-deep tired, but you push through it because that is simply what you do. It's what is expected, what is required. Your energy, which started the day on a precarious footing, feels utterly depleted by 2 in the afternoon, yet there is still a mountain of tasks left to conquer before you can even think about rest. You find your patience wearing dangerously thin, snapping at your children over something as trivial as a spilled glass of milk, only to be flooded with a wave of guilt and regret moments later. The easy affection you once shared with your partner has been replaced by a shorter temper and a sense of distance you don't know how to bridge. At work, you are a ghost of your former self, mechanically going through the motions, meeting deadlines, but the spark, the passion that once drove you, is gone. You might have resigned yourself to this state of being, labeling it as just life or what it means to be a modern woman. You tell yourself that everyone feels this way, that this is the price of having it all. But what if it's not? What if this profound sense of being perpetually overwhelmed, this persistent fatigue, and these dramatic mood changes are not just the normal byproducts of a busy schedule? What if they are signals from your body and your spirit that something is fundamentally out of balance? We often fail to recognize that this state of depletion is not a badge of honor, but a cry for help. It's a warning sign that the way you are living is unsustainable, not just emotionally and mentally, but physically as well. The constant pressure to perform, to give, and to be on takes a heavy toll that goes far beyond simple tiredness. This is where we must consider a crucial, often overlooked piece of the puzzle. Sometimes the persistent fatigue, the brain fog that makes it hard to concentrate, the irritability, and that pervasive feeling of being overwhelmed can be directly linked to nutritional deficiencies that are surprisingly common, especially in busy women who prioritize everyone else's needs above their own. When you're constantly on the go, grabbing a quick, less than ideal snack instead of a nourishing meal becomes the norm. Simple but critical imbalances in vitamins and minerals like iron, vitamin D, or B vitamins can create a cascade of physical and psychological symptoms that make everything in life feel infinitely harder than it needs to be. Your body, deprived of its essential building blocks, simply cannot produce the energy or the neurotransmitters required for emotional stability and mental clarity. This is not to say that your feelings of being lost or disconnected are purely physical. They are not. But it is to say that your physical state creates the foundation upon which your emotional and mental reality is built. When your body is struggling just to function, it becomes nearly impossible to find the extra energy required for introspection, for joy, for connecting with your deeper self. You are stuck in survival mode, and in survival mode, there is no room for self-discovery. You're too busy just trying to get through the day to ask the bigger questions. So, if this picture of exhaustion and overwhelm resonates deeply with you, it's worth considering that the journey back to yourself might need to begin with addressing these foundational aspects of your health and well-being. Let me introduce you to Sarah, a 38-year-old marketing manager, a devoted mother to 2 wonderful children, and a wife of 12 years. To anyone looking in from the outside, Sarah's life was the epitome of success. She lived in a beautiful home in a quiet, leafy suburb. She had a successful, challenging career that she was good at. Her children were happy and well-behaved, and she was married to a loving, supportive husband. She had meticulously constructed a life that checked every box on the list of modern female achievement. But inside, behind the flawless facade, Sarah was drowning in a sea of silent desperation. She felt like an actress playing the lead role in a life that wasn't her own, reciting lines and hitting her marks without any genuine connection to the character she was portraying. I remember looking in the mirror one morning while I was getting ready for work. Sarah confided in me during one of our first conversations. I just stared at the person looking back at me, and I had this chilling realization that I didn't recognize her. Her eyes looked so tired, so empty. When did I become this irritable, exhausted stranger? The woman I saw was a collection of roles: the efficient manager, the caring mom, the supportive wife. But the person, the actual me who was supposed to be living this life, felt completely absent. She had simply vanished. This profound sense of disconnection wasn't just a fleeting mood. It had become her baseline reality, a constant low-grade ache of inauthenticity that colored every aspect of her existence. Sarah's true wake-up call, the moment the persistent whisper of her discontent finally erupted into an undeniable roar, arrived on an utterly ordinary Tuesday afternoon. She was in the middle of a high-stakes client presentation, a task she had performed hundreds of times before with confidence and flair. She was clicking through her slides, speaking with authority, when suddenly the words just stopped. Her mind, once a sharp and reliable tool, went completely and terrifyingly blank. For a full 30 seconds that stretched into an eternity, she stood frozen in front of 15 colleagues, the silence in the conference room growing heavier with each passing moment. The thread of her thoughts had not just frayed, it had snapped entirely. The experience left her shaken to her core, a visceral manifestation of the inner emptiness she had been ignoring for so long. That evening, during her drive home, the weight of that public failure settled upon her, but it brought with it a stark and painful clarity. As the streetlights blurred past her car window, she tried to remember the last time she had felt genuinely, uncomplicatedly happy, not just content with a task completed, not just satisfied with her family's well-being, but truly, personally joyful. She couldn't recall a single recent instance. The realization was devastating. Later that night, she picked up the phone and called her older sister, her voice trembling as she spoke the words that had been haunting her. "I think I'm disappearing," she confessed. Her sister, after a long pause, said something that would alter the course of Sarah's life. "You're not disappearing, Sarah. You just forgot you were there in the first place." That conversation with her sister was Sarah's call to adventure, that classic moment in every hero's journey where they are invited to leave the known world behind and venture into uncharted territory. For Sarah, this territory was not a distant land, but the mysterious, long-neglected landscape of her own inner self. Yet, like so many of us, when faced with such a profound invitation, her first instinct was to refuse the call. The very idea of turning her focus inward felt terrifyingly selfish and indulgent. "I have a family that depends on me," she told herself, the familiar script of responsibility playing on a loop in her mind. "I have a demanding career. I can't afford to fall apart or have some kind of self-centered identity crisis. This is just a phase. I just need to work harder, be more organized, maybe get more sleep." This refusal is a common and understandable reaction. We are conditioned to believe that our needs come last, that prioritizing our own inner world is a betrayal of our duties to others. Sarah tried to double down on her roles, hoping that by performing them with even greater dedication, she could silence the internal clamor. She threw herself into her work with renewed fervor, planned elaborate weekend activities for her children, and tried to be a more attentive partner to her husband. But this strategy of suppression only made things worse. The feelings didn't just persist, they intensified. The exhaustion deepened into a heavy, leaden fatigue that no amount of sleep could cure. Her marriage, already strained, began to suffer more acutely as her emotional withdrawal created a chasm between her and her husband. The consequences of ignoring her inner voice began to ripple outward, touching every corner of her carefully constructed life. Her children, with the uncanny intuition that all children possess, started to notice the change. "Mummy, why are you always so tired?" her youngest asked one evening, a simple question that felt like a dagger to Sarah's heart. Her work performance, which she had tried so desperately to bolster, continued its slow decline. She lived in a constant state of low-grade anxiety, terrified of making another public mistake like the one in the presentation. The life that had once looked so perfect from the outside now felt like a fragile house of cards, trembling on the verge of collapse. It was becoming painfully clear that her attempt to ignore the call was not protecting her family or her career. It was actively harming them. This is the critical turning point that so many women face. It is the moment we realize that continuing to ignore our inner truth is no longer a viable option. The cost becomes too high. The disconnection, the resentment, the exhaustion. They begin to poison the very relationships and responsibilities we were trying to protect by sacrificing ourselves. Sarah finally understood that she wasn't facing a choice between being a responsible adult and being selfish. She was facing a choice between disintegration and integration. She had to answer the call, not as an act of self-indulgence, but as an act of survival. It was the moment she understood that the journey inward was not a retreat from her life, but the only possible path back to living it fully and authentically. Let's be brutally honest for a moment about the carefully constructed masks we wear every single day. These are not malicious deceptions, but survival tools we've learned to use so skillfully that we often forget we're even wearing them. First, there is the ubiquitous Perfect Mother mask. This mask is polished to a high shine, reflecting an image of infinite patience and nurturing warmth. The woman behind this mask never feels tired, never raises her voice in frustration, and certainly never longs for a moment of blessed silence or a space that is entirely her own. She bakes organic muffins, volunteers for every school event, and her love is a bottomless well that never ever runs dry. She puts her children's needs so far ahead of her own that she has forgotten what her own needs even feel like. It is a heavy mask, crafted from societal expectation and personal guilt. Next in the gallery is the supportive wife mask. This one is designed to be endlessly agreeable and understanding. It smiles placidly, listens to her partner's work stresses without mentioning her own, and maintains a beautiful, orderly home as if by magic. The woman wearing this mask is expected to be an emotional rock, a willing romantic partner and a seamless household manager, often without ever articulating her own need for support or partnership in return. She anticipates needs, smooths over conflicts, and works tirelessly to maintain the emotional equilibrium of the relationship. This mask whispers that her value is tied to the happiness and success of her partner, and that asking for her own needs to be met is a sign of being difficult or demanding, a crack in the perfect supportive facade. Then we have the formidable professional woman mask. This mask is sharp, competent, and radiates an aura of unshakable reliability. It is designed to prove that she can do it all, and not just do it all, but do it all effortlessly, without any need for support or accommodation. The woman behind this mask never shows vulnerability, never admits to being overwhelmed, and certainly never lets on that the demands of her life outside of work are affecting her performance within it. She answers emails at midnight, takes on extra projects to prove her commitment, and navigates workplace politics with a detached coolness. This mask is a suit of armor, built to deflect the biases and double standards that still exist. But it is an armor that can become so constricting, it stifles the very creativity and humanity she has to offer. Finally, there is the strong woman mask, perhaps the most treacherous of them all because it is often worn with a sense of pride. This is the mask of the rock, the pillar, the one everyone else leans on. The woman wearing this mask never needs help, never breaks down, and always has it all together. She is the one friends call in a crisis, the one her family turns to for solutions. She carries the emotional weight of everyone around her, absorbing their pain and offering her strength in return. These masks, in isolation, aren't inherently bad. They can be useful, even necessary for navigating the complexities of our lives. They serve a purpose. But the danger arises when we wear them for so long that the mask fuses to our skin, when we forget the face of the person who lies underneath, and when we start to believe that the mask is all we are. Why is it that modern women, more than any generation before, seem to be experiencing this identity crisis on such an epidemic scale? We have more opportunities, more freedom, and more choices than our mothers and grandmothers ever did. Yet, this very expansion of roles has, paradoxically, become a source of profound confusion and fragmentation. In previous generations, a woman's identity was often more narrowly defined by her domestic roles. While this was incredibly limiting, it also provided a clear, albeit restrictive, sense of self and purpose within that societal framework. Today we are told we can be anything and everything: a high-powered executive, a deeply engaged mother, a perfect partner, a fitness enthusiast, a community leader, and a devoted daughter. The expectation is not to choose, but to excel at all of it simultaneously. This relentless pressure to have it all creates a life where we are constantly shifting between roles, performing a complex juggling act from dawn until dusk. We are the CEO in the boardroom at 10 in the morning, the compassionate mum applying a bandage at 4 in the afternoon, and the romantic partner at 9 at night. Each role requires a different skill set, a different emotional tone, a different part of ourselves. The problem is that we spend so much time and energy performing these roles that there is no time left for the director of the play, the core self who is supposed to be orchestrating it all. We become so adept at meeting the external expectations of each role that we lose touch with our own internal compass, our own desires, our own authentic voice. The self becomes fractured, a collection of disparate performances rather than an integrated whole. Furthermore, our society has become masterful at selling us an impossible ideal of womanhood, largely through social media and marketing. We are inundated with curated images of flawless homes, perfectly behaved children, thriving careers, and postpartum bodies that defy biology. We see the highlight reels of everyone else's lives and mistake them for reality. This creates a constant low-grade feeling of inadequacy, a sense that we are perpetually falling short. We look at our own messy, complicated, beautifully imperfect lives and feel that we are failing. This comparison culture pressures us to focus even more intensely on the external, on perfecting the appearance of our lives and roles, further distracting us from the essential work of cultivating our inner world and understanding who we are beneath the surface. So the identity crisis hits now because we are at a unique historical crossroads. We have been liberated from many of the old constraints, but have been shackled by a new set of impossible expectations. We are caught in the chasm between the illusion of limitless choice and the reality of finite time and energy. We have been given the script for a dozen different lives and told to perform them all perfectly, without any instruction on how to maintain our own sense of self amidst the chaos. The identity crisis is not a personal failure, it is a cultural phenomenon. It is the natural, inevitable consequence of a society that asks women to be everything to everyone without first encouraging them to be someone truly and authentically to themselves. It is absolutely crucial that we pause and address a fundamental truth that is too often ignored in conversations about identity: the profound and undeniable connection between our physical health and our sense of self. When we are living a masked life, constantly suppressing our authentic feelings and needs to meet the demands of our roles, we are creating a state of chronic stress in our bodies. This is not just a mental or emotional burden, it is a physiological one. The constant pressure to be on, the internal conflict between who we are and who we feel we have to be, triggers a continuous low-grade fight or flight response. This endless cascade of stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline takes a significant toll on our physical well-being over time. This chronic stress manifests in ways we often mistake for simple busyness or aging. It leads to persistent fatigue that sleep doesn't seem to fix, a kind of deep cellular exhaustion. It can disrupt our digestive system, leading to issues like bloating, indigestion, or irritable bowel syndrome. It weakens our immune system, making us more susceptible to every cold and virus that goes around our children's school or our office. It can also lead to chronic inflammation, which is now understood to be a root cause of many serious health conditions. We think we are just tired from our busy lives, but in reality, our bodies are physically struggling under the weight of living inauthentically. The body, in its infinite wisdom, is sending us clear signals that the way we are living is unsustainable. This physical depletion then creates a vicious cycle. When you are chronically exhausted, plagued by brain fog, and your mood is constantly on a roller coaster due to hormonal imbalances exacerbated by stress, the very idea of self-discovery feels like a cruel joke. How can you possibly find the mental clarity to explore your passions when you can barely remember why you walked into a room? How can you connect with your inner joy when your body is screaming for rest? It is nearly impossible to engage in the deeper work of rediscovering your identity when all your available resources are being used just to survive the day. Your physical state becomes a barrier, a thick fog that obscures the path back to yourself. This is why addressing the physical foundation is not a distraction from the identity work, but often a necessary first step. For so many women, the journey begins not with a journal, but with a visit to a doctor or a nutritionist. It begins with recognizing that the persistent fatigue and mood swings might be linked to a severe iron deficiency, or that the brain fog could be a sign of a vitamin B12 or vitamin D deficiency. When you start to replenish these basic nutritional building blocks, when you give your body the fuel it needs to function optimally, the fog begins to lift, your energy stabilizes, your mood becomes more resilient. It is only then, when you are no longer in a constant state of physical depletion, that you can create the space and clarity needed to ask the bigger questions: who am I really, and what do I truly want? Our struggle to maintain an authentic identity is made infinitely harder by a collection of pervasive cultural myths we have internalized. These myths act like invisible fences, trapping us in patterns of self-sacrifice and role-based validation. The first and honestly most powerful of these is myth number 1. Good mothers sacrifice themselves completely for their children. We are fed this narrative from all sides, that the ultimate measure of a mother's love is the degree to which she erases her own needs, desires, and identity. But the truth, however, is that children do not benefit from having a mother who is a martyr. They benefit from a mother who models what it means to be a whole, happy, and authentic human being. They learn more from watching you respect yourself than they ever will from you sacrificing yourself. Next, we encounter myth number 2. Wanting more than what you have means you're ungrateful. This myth is particularly insidious because it preys on our sense of decency. You have a loving family, a roof over your head, a steady job, so who are you to ask for more? This creates a false dichotomy, forcing a choice between gratitude and desire. The truth is that gratitude and personal growth are not mutually exclusive. They can and should coexist. You can be profoundly grateful for the life you have built while also acknowledging the call of your authentic self to grow, evolve, and explore new facets of your being. Acknowledging your own needs for growth isn't a sign of ingratitude. It's a sign that you are alive and engaged with your own human potential. Then there is myth number 3. Self-focus is selfish, especially when you have a family. This is the guilt trip myth, the one that keeps us perpetually putting ourselves last on the priority list. We are taught that any time, energy, or money spent on ourselves is time, energy, or money being stolen from our family. We see it as a zero-sum game. The profound truth we must embrace is that self-awareness and self-care are not selfish acts. They are prerequisites for being able to truly show up for others. You cannot pour from an empty cup. Tending to your own well-being allows you to give to your family from a place of abundance and genuine desire, rather than from a place of depletion, obligation, and eventual resentment. It is, in fact, the most generous thing you can do for them. Finally, we must dismantle myth number 4. You should know who you are by the time you're an adult. This myth creates a sense of shame around the process of self-discovery later in life. It implies that if you're feeling lost at 35, 40, or 50, you must have been ungrounded or flaky to begin with. This is fundamentally untrue. Identity is not a fixed destination you arrive at on your 21st birthday. Identity development is a lifelong process of evolution and integration. The person you are today is not the same person you were 10 years ago, and that's actually a good thing. It's not only normal but healthy to periodically reassess who you are and what you want as you move through the different seasons of your life. Giving yourself permission to be a work in progress is one of the greatest gifts you can offer yourself. Now let's begin the gentle, careful work of archaeology. Let's try to excavate the person who exists beneath the layers of roles and responsibilities that have accumulated over the years like sediment. Take a moment and travel back in time, back before you became everyone's everything. Before you were a mother, you were a young woman with a universe of dreams swirling inside you. What did that woman want? Maybe she dreamed of backpacking through Southeast Asia, of feeling the grit of foreign soil under her boots. Perhaps she wanted to write poetry that would make people feel seen, or start a small business from a recipe passed down by her grandmother. Maybe she wanted to learn to paint with oils, to become a chef, or to dedicate her life to a cause that set her heart on fire. That woman, with all her vibrant hopes and untamed passions, did not die when you gave birth. She is still there, waiting. Before you were a wife or a long-term partner, you were a singular, complete individual who chose to join your life with another's. Who was she? She had strong opinions, personal goals, and a clear vision for the life she wanted to lead. She had her own favorite music, her own way of spending a Saturday afternoon, her own unique quirks and preferences. You brought specific qualities, dreams, and a rich history of experience to that relationship. The act of marriage was never meant to erase that individual. In fact, a healthy partnership should have provided a safe and supportive context for that very individuality to flourish, to become even more fully realized. Your relationship was meant to be an expansion of your world, not the entirety of it. That independent person is the foundation upon which your partnership was built. And before you were a professional with a specific job title, You were a person filled with natural curiosities, innate talents, and a wide range of interests. Perhaps the career you chose is a perfect alignment with those passions, which is a wonderful thing. But for many of us, our career was a more practical choice, a path selected to provide stability, support a family, or meet a certain expectation. Either way, your professional identity is just one single important facet of who you are. The part of you that is fascinated by astronomy, the part that can fix anything that's broken, the part that loves to organize and create order from chaos, those things are just as real and valid as your job title. They are essential pieces of your unique human puzzle. This exploration is not about creating nostalgia for a life you no longer have. It is about reclamation. It is about remembering that your roles are things you do, but they are not the totality of who you are. The woman who chose to become a mother, the woman who chose her partner, the woman who chose her career path. That core person has desires, dreams, and characteristics that exist independently of those choices. She is the source code, the roles are the applications she is running. For too long, we have focused only on running the applications, forgetting that the underlying operating system needs maintenance, updates, and attention. The journey back to yourself begins with remembering the incredible, complex, and unique person who existed before the world gave you your current job descriptions. That late-night phone call with her sister was Sarah's official call to adventure, that pivotal moment in every hero's journey where the protagonist is invited to leave the familiar, comfortable world behind and venture into the unknown. For Sarah, this uncharted territory was not some distant mythical land, but the mysterious, long-neglected landscape of her own inner self. Yet, like so many of us, when faced with such a profound and unsettling invitation, her immediate and powerful instinct was to refuse the call. The very idea of turning her focus inward felt terrifyingly selfish, a luxury she simply could not afford. The well-worn script of her responsibilities began playing on a relentless loop in her mind, a chorus of obligations meant to drown out the whisper of her soul. "I have a family that needs me," she told herself, reinforcing the walls of her self-imposed prison. "I have a demanding career where people count on my performance. I can't just fall apart or indulge in some self-centered identity crisis." This internal monologue is a familiar one for countless women, a defense mechanism built from years of societal conditioning that teaches us our needs should always come last. Believing this was just a temporary phase, a slump she could power through, Sarah decided to double down on her roles. She resolved to silence the internal clamor by performing her duties with even greater dedication and perfection, hoping that sheer effort could somehow mend the fractures she felt within. She threw herself into her work with a frantic, almost desperate fervor, volunteering for a new project and staying late to prove her commitment. At home, she transformed into a whirlwind of maternal efficiency, planning elaborate weekend activities for her children, baking from scratch, and organizing closets that were already tidy. She tried to be a more present and attentive partner to her husband, suggesting date nights she didn't have the energy for, and initiating conversations she felt too weary to sustain. She was trying to outrun her own emptiness, believing that if she just kept moving fast enough, it wouldn't be able to catch up with her. It was a strategy of suppression, a belief that doing more for others would somehow fill the void that was growing inside her. But this strategy, born of fear and guilt, was doomed to fail. It was like trying to patch a leaking dam with masking tape. The external activity provided a temporary distraction, but it did nothing to address the root cause of her distress. In fact, this frantic doubling down on her roles only exacerbated the problem. It drained her already depleted reserves of energy even faster, leaving her more exhausted and disconnected than ever before. The roles that were meant to be her shield became heavier burdens, each one another layer of armor, preventing her from breathing. She was trying to fix an internal problem with external solutions, and the dissonance was becoming unbearable. The consequences of Sarah ignoring her inner roar soon began to ripple outward, touching every corner of her meticulously constructed life with an undeniable chill. The feelings of discontent didn't just persist, they intensified, metastasizing from a quiet ache into a constant, throbbing pain. The exhaustion deepened into a heavy, leaden fatigue that no amount of sleep could cure, a weariness that felt embedded in her very bones. Her marriage, which was already strained by a subtle emotional distance, began to suffer more acutely. Her withdrawal was no longer subtle. It became a palpable chasm between her and her husband, filled with unspoken resentments and a profound sense of loneliness for them both. Her children, with the uncanny and often painful intuition that all children possess, started to notice the change in their mother. They began to walk on eggshells around her, sensing her fragility and her short fuse. "Mummy, why are you always so tired?" her youngest daughter asked one evening, her innocent question landing like a dagger in Sarah's heart. "Why don't you laugh anymore?" her son asked another time. These questions highlighted the stark reality of her situation. Her attempt to protect her family by silencing herself was, in fact, depriving them of the happy, engaged mother they deserved. She was physically present, but emotionally absent, a ghost haunting the hallways of her own home. At work, the professional mask she had tried so desperately to reinforce began to crack under the strain. Her performance, which she had once taken such pride in, continued its slow but steady decline. Deadlines felt like insurmountable mountains, and simple tasks required a monumental effort of will. She lived in a constant state of low-grade anxiety, a gnawing fear that she would make another public mistake like the one in the presentation. The confidence that had once been her professional bedrock had eroded into a swamp of self-doubt. The life that had once looked so perfect from the outside now felt like a fragile house of cards, trembling on the verge of a complete and humiliating collapse. It was in this crucible of quiet desperation that Sarah reached a critical turning point, a moment of stark realization that so many women eventually face. She understood with a clarity that was both terrifying and liberating that continuing to ignore her inner truth was no longer a viable option. The cost had simply become too high. The disconnection, the resentment, the exhaustion, they were poisoning the very relationships and responsibilities she had been trying to protect through her self-sacrifice. She finally saw that she wasn't facing a choice between being a responsible woman and being a selfish one. She was facing a choice between complete disintegration and the terrifying possibility of integration. Answering the call was no longer an indulgence, it was an act of survival. Sarah's transformation, her first tentative step across the threshold into the unknown, began in the most unlikely of places, the noisy, chaotic gymnasium of her daughter's elementary school during the annual fundraiser. Surrounded by bake sale tables and the cacophony of children playing, she felt more invisible than ever. It was there, while dutifully manning the silent auction table, that she met Dr. Elena Rodriguez, a life coach and psychologist who specialized in women's identity work. Elena was another parent from the school, and their conversation started with the usual pleasantries about their children and teachers. But Elena had a way of looking at people that felt different, a gentle, perceptive gaze that seemed to see past the polite facade. After a few minutes of small talk, Elena paused, looked at Sarah with genuine curiosity, and asked her a question. It wasn't about her job, her family, or the fundraiser. The first thing Eleanor asked me wasn't about my goals or my problems, Sarah would later recall with a sense of wonder. She simply asked me, "When you were 10 years old, what did you love to do just for the pure, unadulterated joy of it? What was the one thing that could make you lose all track of time?" The question was so simple, so unexpected, and so profoundly disarming that it bypassed all of Sarah's carefully constructed defenses and struck a chord deep within her. In that moment, standing in the middle of a loud school gymnasium, something inside Sarah broke open. The question unlocked a door to a part of herself she had boarded up and forgotten for decades. The memories came flooding back with a sudden, overwhelming force. The feel of a spiral notebook in her lap, the satisfying scratch of a pen on paper, the thrill of creating entire worlds and characters out of thin air. She remembered the girl who would disappear into her bedroom for hours, completely lost in the magic of storytelling. The contrast between that joyful, absorbed child and the exhausted, disconnected woman she had become was so stark, so devastating, that tears began to well up in her eyes. Right there, amidst the raffle tickets and cupcakes, Sarah broke down and cried. It wasn't a quiet, dignified weeping, but a raw, cathartic sob that seemed to carry the weight of years of self-neglect. Eleanor didn't flinch or look away. She simply stood there with her, offering a quiet, validating presence until the storm passed. "I love to write stories," Sarah finally managed to say, her voice thick with emotion. "I would write for hours and hours. I haven't thought about that part of myself in 25 years." In that moment of vulnerability, Sarah had not only met her mentor, but she had also been reintroduced to a long-lost part of her own soul. That tearful encounter in the school gymnasium was Sarah's threshold moment. With Eleanor's gentle guidance, she made the conscious choice to step out of the familiar world of her roles and into the challenging, uncharted territory of her inner life. In their first official session together, Elena introduced Sarah to a concept that would become the cornerstone of her journey, a framework that would revolutionize her thinking about who she was. She called it identity archaeology, the delicate and intentional process of excavating the authentic self that has been buried beneath years of accumulated social conditioning, external expectations, and the heavy sediment of assumed roles. It was an idea that immediately resonated with the deepest part of Sarah. "Your roles are not your identity," Eleanor explained, her voice both firm and kind. "Think of them as important and beautiful artifacts you have collected throughout your life. The mother artifact, the wife artifact, the professional artifact. They are valuable, and they tell part of your story, but they are not the totality of who you are. The archaeologist, the person who chose to pick up those artifacts, who chose to become a mother, who chose your partner, who chose your career path, that person has her own desires, her own dreams, and her own essential characteristics that exist completely independently of the artifacts she carries." This metaphor gave Sarah a powerful new way to see herself, not as a collection of roles, but as the conscious being living through them. Elena elaborated on the concept, explaining that over time, we can become so identified with our artifacts that we forget we are the archaeologist. We start to believe that the heavy pot we are carrying is, in fact, our entire being. The work of identity archaeology, she said, is to carefully set the artifacts down for a moment, to brush the dust off of them, and to remember the person holding them. It's about excavating the layers of shoulds, have-tos, and supposed-tos to rediscover the core self beneath. This wasn't about discarding her roles or rejecting her life, a fear that had paralyzed Sarah for so long. Instead, it was about re-establishing the proper relationship between herself and her roles. This new perspective felt like a key turning in a lock that had been rusted shut for years. It gave Sarah the permission she desperately needed to explore her own identity without feeling as though she were betraying her family or her responsibilities. The goal wasn't to smash the artifacts and run away. The goal was to strengthen the archaeologist so she could carry them with more joy, purpose, and less strain. Sarah left that first session with a sense of hope she hadn't felt in years. The path ahead was still daunting and unclear, but for the first time, she had a map. She was no longer just a tired mother and a burnt-out manager. She was an archaeologist, about to embark on the most important excavation of her life. Sarah's journey began with a simple act, 15 quiet minutes of journaling each morning just for herself. The first days were awkward, her inner critic loud, but she persisted, writing about anything that came to mind. Soon she found herself looking forward to this sacred pocket of time. Resistance came not from villains, but from her loved ones. Her husband, Mark, confused and a little insecure. "Why do you need this?" he asked, worried it meant their life wasn't enough. Sarah answered honestly, "It's not about what we have. It's about me needing to feel like I'm enough for myself. This is for me." In reclaiming this small piece, she began to reclaim herself. Identity archaeology starts with small, intentional acts. Carve out 5 minutes a day, your own sacred space, no matter how tiny. Use it to reconnect. Sip tea, stretch, listen to music, or simply breathe. Reconnect with your body. Place a hand on your heart. Listen to what it tells you. Make a list of old dreams and new interests, no judgment. Try something small, a class, a walk, a new hobby. You're not finished. you're always becoming. Journaling is your private lab, a place to use I again. Ask yourself, what makes you lose track of time? What did you love as a child? What would you do if you couldn't fail? Let the questions guide you, not to answers, but to deeper self-awareness. Some days you'll rant, others you'll reflect. Both are valid. The practice itself is transformative. Show up for yourself. You matter. Your biggest obstacles are internal: guilt, fear, and overwhelm. Guilt says self-care is selfish. Remind yourself it's necessary. Fear warns of change. Reassure yourself that small shifts are safe. Overwhelm insists you have no time. Start with 5 minutes. Speak to these voices with compassion, but don't let them rule you. You don't need to overhaul your life. Just begin gently. This is how you move forward. Change unsettles those around you. Partners, kids, friends. Their confusion isn't sabotage, it's fear of losing the old you. Communicate calmly. This isn't about leaving you behind, it's about being more myself. Model self-care for your family. Teach them wholeness is healthy. Remember, their discomfort isn't yours to fix by abandoning yourself. Over time, your growth can inspire their support. A whole, vibrant you is the best gift you can give. Let's return to a point we touched on earlier, because it is so foundational to this entire process that it cannot be overstated: the non-negotiable role of your physical health in the work of identity excavation. It is tempting to view self-discovery as a purely psychological or spiritual endeavor, a matter of journaling, reflection, and emotional processing. But if the bedrock of your physical being is crumbling, you cannot build a sturdy sense of self upon it. When you are chronically exhausted, when your brain is shrouded in fog, and when your mood is volatile due to physiological imbalances, you are essentially trying to do delicate archaeological work during an earthquake. It is frustrating, messy, and ultimately ineffective. Think of your body and brain as the hardware, and your thoughts and emotions as the software. If the hardware is malfunctioning because it lacks the basic resources it needs, proper nutrition, adequate rest, balanced hormones, the software cannot run properly. Many women spend years in therapy talking about their feelings of depression, anxiety, and disconnection, without ever realizing that a significant portion of their symptoms are being caused or dramatically worsened by underlying physical issues. Conditions like iron deficiency anemia, vitamin B12 deficiency, vitamin D deficiency, or thyroid imbalances can produce symptoms that are virtually indistinguishable from a major depressive episode. You may think you've lost your joy, when in fact you've lost your iron. This is why addressing your physical health is not a detour from your identity work. It is the first mile of the journey. It is a radical act of self-love to finally prioritize your own well-being. This might mean scheduling a comprehensive physical with your doctor and specifically asking for blood work to check your vitamin levels, iron stores, and thyroid function. It might mean consulting with a nutritionist to understand how to fuel your body for sustained energy. It could mean committing to a consistent sleep schedule, even when it feels like there are a million other things to do. These actions are not selfish. They are the most fundamental way of honoring the vessel that carries you through this life. When you begin to address these foundational health issues, the shift can be staggering. As your energy levels stabilize, as the brain fog lifts, and as your mood becomes more resilient, you suddenly have the internal resources to engage in deeper self-exploration. The work no longer feels like an impossible chore on top of an already overwhelming life. Instead, you have the clarity and vitality to be curious about yourself again. You can hold the difficult emotions that come with growth without being completely derailed by them. Taking care of your physical self is the ultimate act of empowerment. It clears the static, tunes the channel, and allows you to finally hear the clear, true signal of your authentic self. The ultimate goal of this profound journey is not to detonate the life you have built, nor is it to choose between being your authentic self and being a mother, wife, or professional. The true transformative work lies in integration. This is the art of weaving the vibrant threads of your rediscovered self back into the existing tapestry of your life, making it richer, stronger, and honestly, infinitely more colorful. You are not abandoning your roles. You are choosing to inhabit them as a whole person. You are deciding to be a mother who is also authentically herself, a wife who brings her full being to the partnership, a professional who is guided by her core values. This integration is where the magic truly happens, moving self-discovery from a private practice into a lived public reality. This process of integration looks different for every single woman because every authentic self is unique. For Maria, a pediatric nurse and mother of 3, her identity archaeology unearthed a deeply buried passion for environmental activism. Integration for her didn't mean quitting her job to live in a yurt. Instead, she began to weave this passion into her existing life. She started a small community garden project at her children's school, teaching them and their friends about sustainability. At work, she joined the hospital's wellness committee and became a vocal advocate for greener practices, reducing waste in her unit. Her role as a nurse and a mother became powerful platforms for her authentic passion, not obstacles to it. Consider Jennifer, a software developer who was married for a decade before she realized she had completely lost touch with her love for music. As a teenager, she was a gifted pianist, but life got in the way. Her integration began with a small, consistent act. She bought a simple keyboard and committed to playing for 30 minutes every evening after dinner while her husband cleaned up the kitchen. At first, it felt like a separate, selfish activity, but soon her family began to gather, listening quietly. Her music became the new soundtrack to their evenings, a source of peace and beauty in their home. Her role as a wife and her passion as a musician were no longer in conflict. They had integrated to create a more harmonious family life. Then there is Rachel, who chose to be a stay-at-home mother and found herself feeling intellectually starved after years of focusing on child-rearing. Her excavation revealed a deep curiosity and a passion for social justice. Her integration was not to immediately enroll in a law degree, but to start a book club with other mothers in her neighborhood. They moved beyond typical fiction and began tackling challenging books on social issues, history, and philosophy. This book club became a vibrant intellectual community, a space where Rachel could be both a dedicated mother and a curious, engaged intellectual. She didn't have to choose. She simply had to braid the different parts of herself together into a stronger, more authentic whole. One of the most profound ripple effects of authentic living is the transformation it ignites within your primary relationship. When you have lost yourself in your roles, your partnership often settles into a dynamic of dependency and unspoken resentment. You may look to your partner to provide your entire sense of identity and validation, an impossible burden for any one person to carry. Or you may quietly resent them for a sacrifice you feel you made for the relationship. When you begin to reconnect with your authentic self, you change the fundamental dynamics of this dance. You stop being a half person looking to be completed and start showing up as a whole person choosing to share your life with another whole person. This is the foundation for a true renaissance in your relationship. Instead of losing yourself in the union, you begin to bring your whole, vibrant and evolving self to it. This creates an opportunity for a much deeper and honestly more thrilling level of intimacy. Your partner gets to rediscover you, just as you are rediscovering yourself. They are introduced to the woman who is passionate about pottery, the woman who has strong opinions about politics, the woman who is learning to speak Italian. This brings a new energy, a new curiosity, and a renewed sense of attraction into the relationship. It moves you beyond the comfortable but often stagnant roles of husband and wife, and back into the exciting territory of two complex individuals who are continually choosing each other. This journey also dramatically improves communication. When you are in touch with your own needs, feelings, and desires, you can articulate them more clearly and calmly. You stop expecting your partner to be a mind reader. You can say, "I need an hour to myself this evening," not as an accusation, but as a simple statement of fact. You can share your dreams and passions without apology. This honest, authentic communication builds a bridge of trust and understanding that is far stronger than any foundation built on assumption and people-pleasing. It creates a space where both partners feel safe to be their true selves, knowing they will be met with respect, even if not always with agreement. Ultimately, relationships thrive not on fusion, but on connection between two distinct individuals. By reclaiming your identity, you're giving your partner the greatest gift possible, a spouse who is with them by conscious, joyful choice, not out of a desperate need for identity or a fear of being alone. You love them not because you need them to complete you, but because their presence enhances your already complete self. This shift from a relationship based on need to one based on choice is the very essence of a mature, resilient, and deeply passionate partnership. It allows you to grow alongside each other rather than in spite of each other. The ripple effect of your journey extends with immense power to your children, shaping the very legacy you leave for them. For years, we have been sold the myth that being a good mother means sacrificing your own identity on the altar of your children's needs. The truth, however, is that your children are learning more from who you are than from what you do for them. When they see a mother who is a martyr, who has no interests or passions of her own, who is perpetually exhausted and resentful, they learn a damaging lesson. They learn that love means self-erasure, that womanhood means sacrifice, and that their needs are responsible for their mother's unhappiness. This is a heavy burden for a child to carry. Conversely, when you commit to living as your authentic, whole self, you give your children an invaluable and liberating gift. They get to see a mother who models self-respect. They see a woman who has passions and pursues them, who has boundaries and enforces them, who has a strong sense of her own worth, independent of her role as their mother. This teaches them that it is not only possible but desirable to love and care for others, while still maintaining a strong connection to your own identity. You are giving your sons a blueprint for what to respect in their future partners, and you are giving your daughters permission to become whole, complete human beings themselves. Furthermore, when you are no longer running on the fumes of depletion and resentment, you have so much more to give your children. Your patience is deeper because you are not secretly angry about having sacrificed everything for them. Your presence is more complete because your mind isn't constantly consumed with a sense of loss. You can engage with them from a place of genuine joy and abundance, rather than from a place of grim duty. You will have more energy for spontaneous dance parties in the kitchen, more mental space for silly jokes, and more emotional resilience for navigating the inevitable challenges of parenthood. You become a more fun, more engaged, and more present mother. Ultimately, the legacy you want to leave is not one of a perfect, spotless house or flawlessly executed birthday parties. Your children will not remember the organic purity of every meal you cooked. They will remember how you made them feel. They will remember if their home felt like a place of joy or a place of tension. They will remember the sound of your laughter. They will remember the light in your eyes when you talked about something you loved. By reclaiming your own joy and your own identity, you are not taking something away from your children. You are giving them the greatest gift of all, a happy, vibrant, and authentic mother who shows them what a life fully lived looks like. The positive ripple effects of this journey extend powerfully into your professional life, often in surprising and transformative ways. When you are disconnected from your authentic self, you tend to approach your career from a place of should. You do what you think you should do, what is expected of you, or what provides the most security, often while feeling like an imposter. You go through the motions, meet the deadlines, and play the part of the competent professional, but the work can feel hollow and draining. This disconnect is a primary driver of professional burnout, as you expend enormous energy maintaining a facade that isn't aligned with your core values and passions. When you begin to connect with your authentic self, you start to operate from a place of is. You bring your core values, your unique strengths, and your genuine passions to the table. This doesn't necessarily mean you have to quit your job and find a new one. More often, it means you begin to reshape your current role to better align with who you truly are. You might find yourself speaking up in meetings with more confidence because you are clear on your own perspective. You might volunteer for projects that genuinely excite you, rather than the ones you think will look best on a performance review. Your work ceases to be just a job and starts to become a platform for your self-expression. This infusion of authenticity brings a new level of creativity and energy to your work. When you are aligned with your values, you are more motivated, more innovative, and more resilient in the face of challenges. People are drawn to authenticity. Your colleagues and clients will begin to respond to your genuine passion and clear sense of purpose. You become more effective, not because you're working harder, but because you're working with less internal friction. The energy you once used to maintain a professional mask is now freed up to be used for creative problem-solving and meaningful contribution. You become a leader regardless of your title, because you are operating from a place of integrity. This journey also empowers you to advocate for yourself more effectively. Once you recognize your own worth as a whole person, you are more likely to ask for the raise you deserve, to set boundaries around your work hours, and to pursue opportunities for growth that truly align with your long-term goals. You stop seeing your career as something that happens to you and start seeing it as something you actively create. The professional pivot is not always about changing your career, but about changing the way you show up in it. It's about transforming your work from a role you play into an authentic expression of who you are. It is essential to circle back and understand the profound biological impact of this journey toward integration. Living out of alignment with your true self is not just a psychological concept. It is a state of chronic physiological stress. Every time you swallow your opinion to keep the peace, every time you say yes when your body is screaming no, every time you perform a role that feels inauthentic, you are sending a small but significant stress signal to your nervous system. Over years, this accumulation of microstressors leads to elevated cortisol, chronic inflammation, and a dysregulated nervous system, which are the biological underpinnings of anxiety, depression, burnout, and a host of physical ailments. When you begin to live from a place of authenticity, you are engaging in a powerful form of biological healing. Each act of authentic expression, speaking your truth, setting a boundary, spending time on a passion, is an act of nervous system regulation. It sends a signal to your body that you are safe, that you belong to yourself, and that your needs matter. This process, known as neuroception of safety, allows your body to shift out of the chronic fight or flight mode and into the rest and digest parasympathetic state. This is the state where true healing and restoration occur. Your digestion improves, your sleep deepens, and your immune system strengthens. This healing ripple effect goes even deeper. The stress of living inauthentically is often a key driver of the nutritional deficiencies we discussed earlier. Chronic stress depletes essential nutrients like magnesium, B vitamins, and vitamin C at an accelerated rate. It can also impair gut health, making it harder to absorb the nutrients you do consume. Therefore, as you reduce the psychological stress of inauthenticity, you are also creating a more favorable biological environment. Your body becomes better able to utilize nutrients, your hormonal system begins to find its balance, and the persistent fatigue and brain fog that have plagued you for years may finally begin to lift. Ultimately, reclaiming your identity is a radical act of preventative medicine. The stress of constantly suppressing your true self is far more damaging to your long-term health than the stress of any single deadline or difficult conversation. Many women find that as they address the profound disconnect between who they are and how they are living, chronic physical symptoms they have endured for years, migraines, digestive issues, mysterious aches and pains, begin to improve or even disappear. This is not a coincidence. It is the biology of belonging. When you finally belong to yourself, your body can stop fighting and finally come home to a state of wholeness and health. It is a comforting but ultimately misleading fantasy to think of self-discovery as a finite project with a clear endpoint. We imagine that after a period of intense excavation and reflection, we will find ourselves emerging with a shiny, complete identity that we can place on the mantelpiece like a trophy. The truth, however, is far more dynamic and interesting. Reconnecting with your authentic self is not a one-time event. It is an ongoing daily practice. It is a commitment you make every single day to show up for yourself, to listen to your inner voice, and to make choices, both large and small, that are in alignment with your core being. It is less like finding a buried treasure and more like tending to a garden that requires constant, loving attention to flourish. This shift in perspective from a destination to a practice is incredibly liberating. It removes the pressure to get it right or to be finished with your growth. There will be days when you feel deeply connected to your authentic self, when your choices flow with ease and clarity. There will also be days when you fall back into old patterns, when the masks feel more comfortable, and when the demands of your roles threaten to eclipse your inner truth once again. This is not a sign of failure. It is simply part of the human experience. The practice is not about achieving a state of perfect, uninterrupted authenticity. It is about gently and compassionately returning to yourself over and over again, each time you wander off the path. Think of it like a physical fitness routine. You don't go to the gym for one intense month and then declare yourself fit for the rest of your life. You understand that maintaining strength and health requires consistent, ongoing effort. The same is true for your identity. It needs regular exercise. The muscles of self-awareness, boundary setting, and authentic expression need to be worked consistently, or they will atrophy. This practice is built in the small moments. The moment you choose to say no to a request that drains you, the moment you choose to spend 10 minutes reading a book instead of scrolling through social media, the moment you voice an opinion you might have previously swallowed. These are the daily reps that build your authentic strength. Therefore, the work of identity archaeology is never truly done, because you are a living, evolving being, not a static artifact. The person you are today is different from the person you were 5 years ago, and the person you will be in 5 years will be different still. The practice is about staying in conversation with this evolving self, continually checking in and adjusting your life to align with who you are becoming. It is a dynamic dance, not a rigid march. Embracing this concept of identity as a lifelong practice transforms it from a daunting, overwhelming task into a gentle, sustainable, and deeply rewarding way of life. It is crucial to recognize that the practice of maintaining an authentic identity is not a one-size-fits-all formula. It must adapt and evolve through the different seasons of a woman's life. Each stage brings with it a unique set of challenges, opportunities, and developmental tasks. During the season of early motherhood, for example, when you may be caring for very young children, the sheer physical and emotional demands can be all-consuming. The identity work in this season is often not about grand gestures of self-reinvention, but about simple acts of preservation. It is the practice of remembering that you existed as a whole person before you became a mother and will exist as a whole person long after your children are grown. In this intense season, the practice might look like fiercely protecting a 20-minute nap, scheduling a weekly phone call with a friend who knew you before you had kids, or listening to your own music in the car instead of nursery rhymes. It's about setting tiny, achievable boundaries around your time and energy and asking for help without being consumed by guilt. The goal is to keep a slender, unbreakable thread of connection to your pre-motherhood self, a lifeline that will guide you back when the fog of early parenting begins to lift. It's about survival and remembrance, planting the small seeds of selfhood that will be ready to grow in a later season. As you enter the midlife season, often from ages 35 to 50, the context shifts dramatically. Your children may become more independent, your career might feel either established or stagnant, and the existential question of, is this all there is, can become incredibly urgent. This is frequently the season when the identity crisis hits with the most force, but it is also a season ripe with opportunity for profound growth. The identity work here becomes more expansive. It involves rediscovering passions that were put on a high shelf years ago, reassessing your life goals and priorities, and potentially making significant, courageous changes to bring your external life into closer alignment with your authentic self. In the mature years, from age 50 onward, another season begins. Roles shift again as children may leave home and career pressures might decrease. This season often brings a newfound sense of freedom and a greater capacity to focus more fully on authentic self-expression. The identity work here involves gracefully letting go of old roles and embracing the new aspects of identity that emerge in their place. It can be a time for pursuing long-deferred dreams with vigor, finding new avenues for purpose and meaning, and stepping into the powerful role of a mentor, guiding other women who are just beginning their own journeys through the earlier seasons. Each season requires a different focus, but the core practice of listening to your authentic self remains the constant guiding star. One of the most powerful and practical tools for maintaining your connection to your authentic self through all of life's seasons is to create a personal identity mission statement. This is not a list of goals or resolutions. It is a concise, heartfelt declaration of your core values, your innate gifts, and your sense of purpose in the world. It is written based not on your roles, but on the essential, unchanging truth of who you are. This mission statement acts as your personal constitution, an anchor that can hold you steady when the storms of life threaten to pull you off course, and when the demands of your roles become overwhelming. It is a touchstone you can return to remind yourself of what truly matters. To begin crafting your statement, start with a series of reflective prompts. With your journal in hand, consider these questions. What are the 1 or 2 values that are absolutely non-negotiable for me, such as creativity, compassion, integrity, or adventure? What am I naturally, almost effortlessly good at? What problems or needs in the world do I feel a deep personal calling to address, no matter how small the scale? How do I want to be remembered by the people I love beyond my roles? What activities bring me a sense of deep satisfaction and flow, completely regardless of any external recognition or reward? Allow yourself to answer these from the heart, without judgment or editing. Once you have a collection of these core ideas, begin to weave them together into a few powerful sentences. Let's revisit Sarah's story. After her excavation work, she crafted her identity mission statement. I am a storyteller and a connector who helps others find their own voice. I bring creativity, empathy, and authenticity to everything I do. I am a lifelong learner who finds beauty in both grand adventures and quiet, ordinary moments. Notice how this statement elegantly captures the essence of who she is, independent of her specific job title or her family status. It is a statement that can guide her choices, whether she is in a marketing meeting, helping her child with a school project, or planning a vacation. Your mission statement becomes a powerful filter for decision-making. When faced with a choice or an opportunity, you can hold it up against your statement and ask, is this in alignment with who I say I am? Will this allow me to be more of a storyteller, a connector, a lifelong learner? It helps you say yes to the things that nourish your soul and no to the things that drain it. Place your mission statement somewhere you can see it regularly, taped to your bathroom mirror, on a note card in your wallet, or as the screensaver on your phone. Let it be a constant, loving reminder of the authentic self you are committed to honoring. While the journey of self-discovery is deeply personal, it is a profound mistake to believe it must be taken in isolation. In fact, attempting to do this work entirely on your own is one of the surest ways to get stuck or give up. We are social beings who heal and grow in connection with others. Building a multi-layered support system is not a sign of weakness. It is a crucial strategy for success and sustainability. This network of support becomes your safety net, your sounding board, and your team of cheerleaders, providing strength and perspective when your own resolve wavers. This journey is simply too important and too challenging to be undertaken as a solitary mission. The first layer of this support system is often professional. Working with a skilled therapist, a life coach, or a counselor who specializes in women's identity issues can be an invaluable investment. A professional can provide objective guidance, introduce you to new tools and frameworks like identity archaeology, and hold you accountable to your own stated goals. They offer a safe, confidential space where you can explore your deepest fears and desires without judgment. They are trained to help you see the patterns you might be blind to, and to challenge the limiting beliefs that have been holding you back, accelerating your progress in ways that are difficult to achieve on your own. The second, equally vital layer is peer support. You must actively seek out connections with other women who are on similar journeys of self-discovery. This might take the form of a formal support group, an online community, a book club, or simply the intentional deepening of friendships with women who see and celebrate you for who you are as an individual, not just for the roles you play. These relationships are the mirrors that reflect your authentic self back to you. They are the friends who will say, "Yes, take that painting class," and who will understand when you need to talk about something other than your kids or your job. They normalize the struggle and celebrate the victories with a unique understanding. The third layer of support involves your family. This can be the most challenging to cultivate, but is also profoundly rewarding. It requires helping your family understand your journey, not as a rejection of them, but as a path to becoming more fully yourself, so that you can love them more authentically and from a place of abundance. This involves patient communication, setting loving boundaries, and inviting them to be part of your growth. Ask your partner to help protect your sacred time. Share your new passions with your children. When your family transforms from being a source of resistance into a source of support, you know that the integration is truly taking root in your life. The grand sweeping changes in life are, often born from the accumulation of small, consistent daily actions. To keep your authentic self at the forefront of your life, it is essential to create simple daily rituals of remembrance. Now, these are not meant to be time-consuming additions to your already packed schedule. Rather, they are brief, intentional pauses designed to anchor you in your truth throughout the day. The first of these can be a morning check-in. Before your feet even hit the floor, or before you reach for your phone to check emails, just take 2 minutes to check in with yourself. Place a hand on your heart and ask, "How am I feeling right now, really? What do I need today to feel more like myself?" This simple act sets the tone for the entire day, shifting your initial focus from the external demands of others to your own internal state. It allows you to move into your day with more intention. Based on your check-in, you might decide you need a few moments of quiet before the kids wake up, or that you need to schedule a walk during your lunch break. Another powerful daily practice is boundary setting. See every day as a new opportunity to practice saying a gentle no to requests that drain your energy or misalign with your values, and a courageous yes to small opportunities that light you up, even if they seem unproductive. Each boundary is a declaration of self-worth. An evening reflection is another vital ritual that can take less than 5 minutes before you go to sleep. Instead of replaying your to-do list for tomorrow, ask yourself 2 simple questions. When did I feel most like myself today? And when did I feel least like myself today? This practice helps you identify the people, activities, and situations that nourish your authentic self and those that deplete it. It provides valuable data for the next day, allowing you to consciously choose to incorporate more of what makes you feel alive and to minimize or reframe what does not. It's a process of gentle daily course correction toward a more authentic life. Finally, consciously plan for your soul. Once a week, when you're looking at your calendar, schedule in one non-negotiable block of time, even if it's just 30 minutes, that is dedicated solely to an activity that feeds your authentic self and has no purpose other than your own joy. This could be time to write, to garden, to visit a museum, to practice an instrument, or to simply sit in a park. By putting it on your calendar, you give it the same weight and importance as a dentist appointment or a work meeting. These small, consistent rituals are the threads you use to weave your authentic self into the very fabric of your daily existence, ensuring it is not a distant concept but a lived, breathing reality. This entire journey, this deep exploration into the heart of who you are, is not about finding some new, improved version of yourself that you need to build from scratch. It is about remembering. It is about returning home to the woman you have always been, the one who has been waiting patiently beneath the layers of expectations, responsibilities, and the costumes of your many roles. She has been there all along, her whisper a constant, faithful call that you are now finally ready to hear. This is not a judgment on the life you have built or the roles you cherish. It is simply an invitation to bring all of yourself to that life, to inhabit it fully with every ounce of your unique, complex, and magnificent being. Let me be unequivocally clear about something you may need to hear. You are not too old to change your life. You are not too busy to answer the call to grow. The people in your life do not need you to be a diminished version of yourself. They need you to be whole. You're not too late to start living a life that feels authentic and true, a life that lights you up from the inside out. The world does not need another woman who has sacrificed her spark for the comfort of others. The world desperately needs what you, in your truest form, have to offer. Your authentic self possesses gifts, insights, and a unique energy that no one else on this planet can give. Think about the legacy you are creating. Your children need to witness a mother who is a whole person, a woman who shows them that it is possible to love fiercely and care for others without losing oneself in the process. Your partner needs a spouse who chooses the relationship every day from a place of abundance and wholeness, not from a place of desperation or a fear of being incomplete. Your work, whether it is in an office or in the home, needs you to bring your full creativity, your untamed passion, and your unique perspective to the challenges you face. Your authenticity is not a selfish indulgence, it is your greatest contribution to the world. But most importantly, beyond what anyone else needs from you, you deserve to live as your authentic self. You deserve this not because it will make you a better mother, a better partner, or a better professional, though it will undoubtedly do all of those things. You deserve to live a full, rich, and genuine life simply because you are inherently worthy of it. You were born with a unique light, and it is your birthright to let that light shine as brightly as possible. This is the permission you may have been waiting for your entire life. This is your invitation to come home to yourself. I cannot promise you that this journey of rediscovering who you are beyond your roles will always be easy. There will be moments of discomfort, fear, and resistance, both from within yourself and from the world around you. Change is rarely a smooth, linear process. It can be messy and challenging. But while I cannot promise you ease, I can make you this promise with absolute certainty. It will be worth it. Every ounce of effort, every moment of courage, every difficult conversation will be returned to you 100-fold in the form of a life that finally feels like your own. The reward is not a destination, but a new way of being in the world. Imagine waking up in the morning with a sense of energy and purpose that comes not from caffeine, but from a deep well of inner alignment. This is the promise of authenticity. When you are no longer expending enormous amounts of energy fighting against your own true nature every single day, that energy becomes available for you to use for joy, for creation, and for connection. You will find you have more patience with your loved ones, not because you are trying harder, but because you are no longer operating from a place of quiet resentment about the parts of yourself you have been forced to sacrifice. You are giving from a full cup. In your work, you will feel more engaged and creative because you are bringing your whole, multifaceted self to the table. Your unique insights and passions will become your greatest professional assets. In your relationships, you will experience a new depth of intimacy, one built on the honest connection between two whole individuals rather than the fragile dependency of two halves. The fear of being discovered as an imposter will fade, replaced by the quiet confidence of someone who knows who she is and what she stands for. This is the profound peace that comes from living a life of integrity, where your inner world and your outer world are finally in harmony. Most importantly, you will stop feeling like you are slowly disappearing. That terrifying sense of being invisible, of being a ghost in your own life, will begin to recede. In its place, a new sense of solidity and presence will grow. You will start to feel like you are finally becoming visible, first and most critically, to yourself, and then, as a natural consequence, to the rest of the world. You will look in the mirror and recognize the person staring back at you, not as a collection of roles, but as a friend you have been waiting a lifetime to meet. This is the promise of the authentic path. If you have stayed with this message, if these words have resonated in the deepest parts of your soul, it is because something within you is ready for a change. That whisper has become a roar, and you are ready to answer its call. The journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step, and your journey back to yourself can begin right now, in this very moment. It does not require a grand plan or a perfect set of circumstances. It simply requires a choice. You can choose to take one small intentional step today toward honoring the woman you truly are. First, make a declaration to yourself. You can say it out loud, write it down, or simply speak it in the quiet of your own heart. Say the words, "I am a complete and magnificent human being, and I am worthy of living a full, authentic life." Feel the power and truth of that statement settle into your bones. This is your new starting point. Then commit to taking one small, tangible action this week that is purely for you, an action that honors a part of your authentic self. It could be buying that journal, taking a walk in nature alone for 20 minutes, downloading an app to learn a new language, or calling an old friend who knew you before your current roles defined you. Be patient and deeply compassionate with yourself throughout this process. You are unlearning decades of conditioning, and that takes time, courage, and grace. There will be days of breakthrough and days of setback. Celebrate every small victory, every moment you choose authenticity over obligation, every time you honor your own needs. Acknowledge the courage it takes to say no, to set a boundary, or to spend time on something just because it brings you joy. Each of these small acts is a revolutionary step toward reclaiming your life. You are not just a mother, you are not just a wife, you are not just a professional. You are a complex, evolving, and brilliant human being. Remember that you are not alone on this path. Reach out for the support you need, whether it is professional, from your peers, or from the resources we have shared. Your journey back to yourself does not have to be a solitary one. The most important thing is to simply begin. The woman you are seeking has been waiting for you. She is ready for you to come home. Your true life is not something that will start someday in the future when things are less busy. It is waiting for you to claim it, right here, right now. Take that first brave step today.